Welcome to The Green Rush, a podcast about the intersection of cannabis, the capital markets, and culture. On a weekly basis, hosts Ann Donahoe and Louis Goldberg of KCSA Strategic Communications speak with the business leaders, financial experts, cultural icons, legislators, and generally interesting people moving the cannabis industry forward. Today, Anna and Louis are chatting again with Representative Earl Blumenauer, a House Democrat from Oregon and one of the preeminent voices in the legalization movement. He's represented Oregon as a congressman for more than 20 years, a state where voters first legalized medical marijuana back in 1998, becoming one of the very first states to do so. Oregon made history again in 2012 when its voters legalized adult use cannabis. So don't sit back, lean forward. Now onto our conversation with Ann, Louis, and Representative Earl Blumenauer.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, Louis. It's so good to see you.
I love this technology. It's pretty fucking amazing. And this is now the second interview that we've done video. The first was Kevin Smith, and now we've gotten to speak with Congressman Earl Blumenauer. And this is that reverse time thing that we do where we talk about what we're going to talk about after we've already talked about it.
Yeah, it's weird. And if two dummies like us can get video working, I mean, like, the world is our oyster. And I feel like, especially after that conversation, why can't the Senate figure out remote voting?
They can. They just don't want to. And
I
think
know they don't want to. And it's just frustrating.
It is amazing to me that this is the second time you and I have gotten to speak with Congressman Earl Blumenauer. Last week, we spoke with Kevin Smith. I've interviewed Mike Tyson. It blows me away the doors that what we're doing has opened for you and I to speak to unbelievable people. You know, it's truly a gift, I think, to do this podcast. And it's been, my time with you is fantastic. The prep that we do for this, I love. I actually love researching the guests.
Oh,
I love
had
the
a blast on this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do some of my work that I was supposed to be doing this week, but whatever, we'll catch up. And I mean, this is really, it's special. It feels special. It feels different. It feels needed. And it feels like we're making a difference. So,
yeah. And I also like the video side of this. So we'll try more of this when it fits. Hey, you know what? The interaction with Kevin was pretty amazing. The interaction with the congressman was great. God
forbid I put on makeup once a week. And I'm wearing jeans.
I'm wearing cargo shorts.
I'm wearing jeans.
But
I
I'm
want
also
to be
wearing,
respectful.
Hey, by the way,
Nice.
We have Green Rush swag. So if anybody wants this,
merch.
We can make it for you. Merch. So this is a really cool hoodie that my wife Melissa.
It's actually
designed.
the perfect material too. It's not too heavy. It's not too light.
Yeah.
It's magical.
And then we also have a baseball raglan jersey, which I'll wear for the next one. And you guys can see that. So, all right. Now it's on to our conversation with Congressman Earl Blumenauer, Democrat from Oregon. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us again. We truly appreciate it. And it's nice this time to actually be able to see your face. We've just started doing video as well as audio, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Happy to do it.
Where are you? Are you in D.C.? Are you in Oregon?
After our last votes, I came back to Portland. If I'm going to be sheltering in place, I would much rather do it having my conference calls wandering through Northeast Portland as opposed to being trapped in D.C.
I don't blame you. Portland is an amazing city, and it's a much better place to be than back in the swamp.
Well, I like Washington, but I'd much rather be in my hometown, that's for sure.
Don't blame you there. Well, again, you were on our number 50 show back in October of 2018. And while the world has completely changed from that time, the world of cannabis is kind of staying the same. And if anything, the COVID-19 outbreak has only proven that cannabis is indeed essential, yet they're not really being afforded the same benefits like the Paycheck Protection Program as other businesses are. And you've recently introduced legislation to make the cannabis businesses eligible for the next round of the SBA COVID-19 loans. Can you give us the latest on that bill?
Yeah, well, what we did, and it was interesting, we had almost 36 people join us. And we had bipartisan leadership, Congressman Young and McClintock, because there's sort of a discrepancy across the country. State legal cannabis enterprises have been deemed essential. And unfortunately, they have been left out of all of the opportunities that we have with the federal government to be able to help these small businesses. So we wanted to put that very clearly on the radar screen. We had about 36 members of Congress who joined us. It's not going to be part of this next package, but we thought it was really, really important to be able to demonstrate the impact that the cannabis industry's had, the fact that they have legitimate interests that should be addressed, and the fact that we're looking at a sector that is rapidly growing. It's an opportunity for employment to be maintained. In fact, in parts of the country, as you know, actual business went up during this horrific time. Mm-hmm. And at a time when we're watching the revenue picture for state and local governments deteriorate by the minute, the taxes that are generated by legal cannabis enterprises can play a critical role. It's over $2 billion. And in this next year, there's an opportunity for more. So we thought it was important to put it in the spotlight, to engage people to be part of that effort with us, and to keep it in the public eye.
Along the line of taxes, cannabis companies, as you said, are among the few businesses that are actually pumping revenue into state, municipal, and even federal coffers because of 280E. They still don't have the ability to bank properly. They are still unbelievably restricted. What's going on with the SAFE Act in the Senate? I mean, can our friends in the deliberative body actually walk and chew gum at the same time, or are they just, I don't know what the hell they're doing, sir?
Well, it's vexing, I will say. And candidly, the Senate has just kind of swallowed up important legislation that the House has passed from the beginning. And it's frustrating for us. And a lot of that legislation that the Senate refused to move on was bipartisan. And virtually all of it was bipartisan. One of the best examples, as you know, is our Safe Banking Act. That was a result of just monumental efforts. And I'm so pleased with the partnership with Ed Perlmutter, Denny Heck, just sort of staying with it. And we had an outstanding vote in the House, 323 votes in favor of it, about 3-1. And every Democrat except one voted for it, and about 40% of the Republicans. It was a very strong bipartisan vote. That's been languishing in Moscow Mitch's.
Oh, thank you.
Don't get him started, please,
you
Congressman.
Got me and our producer, Shay Gunther. Like, we love you for that, sir.
Okay. But it is teed up and ready to go. There's been some, discussion in the Senate, but we gave them a piece of legislation that has overwhelming bipartisan support, and we've carefully built the base past the cannabis industry. Two of the more powerful voices were the credit unions and the bankers. These are kind of button-down men and women. They're not radical. They're not always the most popular, but particularly the credit unions have wide popular support, and the bankers were very helpful in making the case that this is an issue of public safety. It's convenience. It allows the businesses to operate. It's easier and better for the financial institutions to not have to deal with uncertain
cash,
extra cost. So this is, and it's there. It's we have 6 more months realistically where legislation can be considered, and then there is very likely to be a session after the election. And that is a time historically that we've had pretty good luck being able to graft legislation on other vehicles that are moving.
Boy, you think Donald Trump will sign anything progressive if he loses? I mean, I can't imagine.
I don't know that it matters. This is something that Trump was not top of mind with him. He was sort of, I won't say trapped, but he kind of got locked into a position on camera in Colorado before the election, where he made it clear that he thought, the states ought to be able to do what the states wanted to do. And I actually think that's his mindset. I don't think this is an issue that
you're giving him credit for having a mindset, sir.
Well,
that's me saying that, not you. I wouldn't put those words into your mouth.
No, I don't think this is a major policy issue with Donald Trump. I think it would be kind of live, let live. I think he probably has a number of people that he knows who are active in this space. But I think if we are able to break it loose, it won't even need his signature. I mean, it will pass in the Senate and in the House by a veto-proof margin. What we need to do is get it moving. So things are, to say the very least, unsettled right now. I mean, I don't know if I'm coming back next week to vote, or the week after that, or the week after that.
Does it worry you to actually have to fly back in the world the way it is today, and to be in DC, and would you be concerned for your own physical health?
Well, it's probably not the wisest thing if we were in any other set of circumstances for people to consider bringing 435 people from every corner of the country through airports. There are virtually no direct flights anymore to Washington, D.C., so they're hopping off in airports across the country, exposing our staff and family members to it's probably something that you wouldn't advise people to do. I've done it. It was 2 weeks ago, we had a big piece of legislation that we wanted to pass, and the Republicans insisted on doing it in person, which they can. But it took literally 3 days for me to fly on virtually empty airplanes, with one exception, through zombie airports. And then when I got to DC, I had to rent a car because I'm not exactly going to be on the metro or some taxi or Uber, Lyft, to sanitize So this was a very elaborate procedure to get there. And then I spent an entire day. I had a 1-minute speech on the floor, and people were scattered all over the great big chamber. So nobody was within 10 or 12 feet of one another, filing in differently. And when we actually voted, putting our card, we entered the chamber in small groups. So it took 5 hours to cast 2 votes, and then repeat the procedure, going home. So it's not probably optimal, but if that's necessary. I mean, there are people who are exposing themselves every day to stock grocery shelves, people who are working in hospitals, people who are providing maintenance in nursing homes. So no, it's not optimal, but there are lots of Americans who are putting their health on the line every day.
Including people who work in the cannabis industry, the ones who are working in the dispensaries, who are delivering, this is an essential service.
There's no question about it. And we've talked about this before, but one of the things that I am so pleased that we've been able to have people in Congress appreciate is that this product is really an essential service. It is fundamental. There are people, I can't tell you how many hundreds of people I've talked to who explain how access to medical cannabis has saved their life or the life of a loved one or a son who was in the service, a daughter with PTSD or with extreme nausea from chemotherapy. I mean, this is absolutely essential for hundreds of thousands of people every month. It also, candidly, is an economic generator. As we've talked that sales have remained strong. In some cases, they went up. People want the product. They'll pay for it. There are almost 250,000 people who are working in the cannabis industry. Mm-hmm. Now, these are people who are not on unemployment. And one of the things that you've helped us spotlight is how responsible the industry has been, whether you're talking about small mom and pop operations in street corners, or you're talking about larger business models. They treat their employees well. Many of them are paid much higher than average wages. Many of them get full benefits, good working conditions. And because in the cannabis industry, the standards have been so high,
yep,
people are actually safer.
That's what our clients are saying, that this is among, the safest spaces you can be, especially if you're in a greenhouse, or if you're at the safety protocols, and even the safety protocols I'm in Los Angeles in the different dispensaries. I feel safer going in there than I do Ralph's. And, they take it very seriously. It's not a joke to them. And, it's become this weird joke, on social media. Like, I can get, weed down the street, but I have to see my hairdresser in a back alley. And it's like, well, two different things.
Well, you should. I mean, it is safer to be in a dispensary or to work in the facilities that are producing product. Absolutely.
Do you think that this is really a transformational time for the cannabis industry now that it is considered essential? It's so hard to put the genie back in the bottle, once something is deemed essential during a global pandemic, right? So, and public support's on the side of cannabis, or do you see this, as a blip in history, so that when this is all over, we're going to go back to the same old crazy rules and regulations and web of state by state? Like, how do you see this moment in time for the future of the cannabis industry?
Well, I'm treating it as a unique opportunity. And that depends on what we do. Mm-hmm. It's why, even though it wasn't going to be in the next round of recovery legislation, why we work so hard to make the case and to get dozens of people to sign on board, and why I've given, 500,000 interviews. I mean, we wanted people to focus. Well, Not all as elaborate and as insightful as you, but it's important because this is an inflection point. In part, it goes far beyond cannabis. I mean, we've never seen anything like this set of circumstances ever. I mean, we're watching the biggest economic problem since the Great Depression.
This is horrible. And we are all going to suffer from COVID traumatic stress disorder. You know, the mental impact that this is going to have on people is going to be seen for decades.
But I'm going to just follow through why I think it is so essential. It's not just that the economy is in free fall, and we've seen job losses unlike any we've seen since 1933. Franklin Roosevelt in 1933 didn't have to deal with the Spanish flu at the same time. The country had 10, 11 years to recover. We didn't have a pandemic then. And it was Franklin Roosevelt in the White House, not Huey Long, without Huey Long's
intellect.
Well, I was going to say his charming characteristics and better instincts. I mean, he was a demagogue. He was power hungry, but he did things for the people, and he had a certain charm about him. This guy, not so much. And the country, in the depths of the Great Depression, Franklin Roosevelt was able to bring people together. He had a base of political support, unlike what we see now with the deep divisions, and Donald Trump deliberately trying to divide the country and doing things that just set people off. So we have greater economic problems, greater social problems, greater political problems. And that is the opportunity, because we can't continue doing what we're doing now. We're going to have to invest heavily. We've spent $4 trillion in a matter of weeks. We're changing policies. There was, 4 months ago, access to quality childcare and paid family sick leave. Those were controversial issues. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're so controversial now. Mm-hmm. And I think there's an economic, a political, and a social opportunity. And I think people in the cannabis space have been pioneering efforts running against the odds. We didn't have much help politically for the last 6 or 7 years. These are things that we worked mm-hmm. with grassroots advocates, with the industry, with some enlightened people, not so much with the political elite. This is a moment to be able to broaden the base and to be able to make enduring reforms. So I don't know. I'm talking too much.
No, you're not.
Well,
no, this is good.
This actually, it's almost like you read our scripts. But we looked into the history of prohibition, and it while it didn't help. Right. Turn the economy totally, it was credited with helping fund some of the New Deal initiatives. And it was, people just like to your point about like childcare and healthcare, like those issues just, are highlighted as how are we not already doing this? Do you think that, this is going to, do you think that argument will resonate with your Republican colleagues when you talk about things like jobs and taxes?
I think it will, but to your point, the repeal of prohibition in a heartbeat. It was the quickest constitutional amendment ever ratified, and it made such a difference. It brought an industry out of the shadows. It started paying taxes legally rather than mm-hmm. Bribes and under the table payments and. Mm-hmm. And fueling the criminal enterprise. It took a while. It took a long time to recover from it. But there's a very powerful parallel.
Well, and not to cut you off, but I also read that it was the state of Utah that took them over the edge. And it was like, once you've lost the Mormons who don't drink, you've really lost your argument here. So, I see it as a positive thing and a good message for the industry in general. Absolutely.
And I think this is our opportunity this year to navigate the politics. I don't want to get hung up. I have very strong feelings that I want my team to be in charge of the Senate. I want somebody else in the White House. Thank you very much. But these are things that we can navigate and we can build bipartisan support. I'm looking forward to work that we will do on the state level, both legislatively and perhaps some initiatives that will ripen. This is a climate that I think will be uniquely receptive to the messages that we've been carrying across the country for the last 10 years. The public agrees with us. The support continues to build. The examples of success. I think there's an opportunity for us to make huge strides in state level legalization through the legislative process and the initiative.
Our mutual friend Adam Smith from the Craft Cannabis Coalition in Oregon, he and I have a bet about interstate commerce. He thinks that it gets done next year. Somehow, some way, he thinks that even before COVID and in light of COVID, that there's a good chance that, the compact between Oregon, Washington, and California will somehow spur other states to allow for the transport of cannabis in between states. Do you think that's even possible? Or I
think that people are encouraged to look at some big picture issues differently. I think there is a political tide, and I'm spending my spare time trying to encourage that tide, trying to encourage candidates for the House and the Senate to understand how powerful this issue is. Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue to be active in this space. I've got my little cannabis fund. When I help candidates, they don't get a campaign contribution from me without understanding the power of the issue of modernizing and repealing the failed prohibition of cannabis. I think that there's a growing interest and strength, and dealing with things like the Interstate Compact. We've talked before about how the world is changing. We have the potential for a consolidated North American cannabis free trade area with what's happened in Canada and in Mexico and what is happening in most of America right now. Mm-hmm. We can harmonize and equalize supply and distribution. There's opportunities for marketing, for strengthening cannabis enterprises, large and small, for craft cannabis. I think
research, medical research. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Our friends up at MAPS are funding research with the VA on using cannabis and cannabinoids for PTSD. It's absurd that this issue, especially on the way it can be used for treating veterans for pain, opioid addiction, that the right hasn't embraced this the same way that they have amazingly embraced psychedelics. But we'll talk about psychedelics some other time.
Because
we're gaining momentum there. And we did get legislation that has left the Veterans Committee to deal with veterans' access to cannabis. We've had a fascinating hearing on the research aspect, and then something we haven't talked about yet, but I think is a signal accomplishment, is the MORE Act. We've been working with Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, somebody who's been working in this. He's the only other person I know who was working on this in the 70s as a legislator. New York decriminalized in 1979, and Jerry was part of that leadership. He assigned 2 outstanding members of the Judiciary Committee staff. And remember, the Judiciary Committee's had a lot going on this last year, but they've come up.
We almost got them.
They came up with a really superb piece of legislation that passed out of committee with bipartisan support and is teed up for House action when we hopefully get back to normal.
Do you want to talk politics now? I mean, presidential politics now? It seems like you have sparred with your friend Joe Biden, who is now the Democratic nominee on this issue. Presumptive nominee. What do you think a Biden administration would do for cannabis? Do you think he's there?
You should know that this is something that we have shared with Team Biden in the past, how this was an opportunity for him. But bear in mind, he was part of the Obama administration that gave the Cole memo guidance and basically did not interfere with state legal cannabis activities. They were much more accommodating. And this was back when the issue was maybe not quite as clear cut. I think that Vice President Biden would be at least as accommodated and probably more than we had with the Obama administration. He was part of that. He knew and respected those folks. And I think it is almost a settled issue at this point.
Yeah, but don't you think that by Vice President Biden not embracing this issue, he is giving President Trump an opportunity to wedge? If Trump just came in and said, in my next administration, I promise, whether he'll do it or not, to legalize weed, he'll go left. It just doesn't make sense. Why isn't he, even from a pure politics perspective, let alone the policy, is he embracing this?
He will. I mean, we've had, as I mentioned, I've had conversations with his team. Those are ongoing connections. I truly think the Biden administration would be very favorable. And I think he will be more outspoken in the course of a campaign. I mean, this is so bizarre. But I am confident the point has been made. I'm confident they'll do it. And even more important, I think it's going to play a key role in elections for the Senate and the House. That's what I'm worried about. And I want to make sure that we're able to deliver. And I think we're watching the Democratic candidates embrace this in a way that continues to make me smile. I think it's going to make a difference in their efforts to control the Senate. It'll strengthen our role in the House. But more important, the politics should feed the policy that's good for the American public. We desperately need to end the failed prohibition of cannabis. We need to embrace the research.
We need to end the war on drugs, period. I mean, it's the whole thing is absurd.
You get no quarrel from me. And that's another byproduct of this cannabinoid, this coronavirus crisis. We're finding out that there are lots of people in jail for nonviolent drug offenses, some for very long sentences that didn't need to be there.
Life. And you have life. It's absurd.
We're watching people leave jails and prisons, not as many as we could, but it's a change in the mindset. And I think that's going to continue in the months ahead. This is all part of this reset that is going to make such a difference, and cannabis is at the heart of it.
Do you think we can retake the Senate?
Yes.
I like that answer. That was the best answer we've ever had to any question.
Absolutely. I mean, you go through the list. I mean,
look, Amy McGrath is neck and neck with Mitch McConnell in Kentucky.
that had elected a Democratic governor. There's opportunities in Maine. I think Susan Collins is in trouble. In Colorado, it looks
Cory
like
Gardner
against Gardner is well ahead. In Arizona, McSally has been out-campaigned, out-polled, and out-fundraised by Mark Kelly, the husband of my
guy.
dear former colleague Gabby Giffords. Tillis in North Carolina. You go down the list. My favorite is in Kansas. I actually ended up campaigning in Kansas for 2 Democrats in the fall of 2018. And if you would have told me at the spring of 2018, I would be doing that in the home stretch, I wouldn't have believed it. But it happened. And one of them actually won, who is very favorable to legalization. And there's a person there who lost the campaign for governor, Kobach, who's really a loose cannon, a very destructive person, anti-immigrant, just voter suppression. He's the front runner currently to win the Republican nomination for Senate. So there's a lot going on. Montana. So yes, the Senate is definitely in play.
Congressman, we want to be respectful of your time. You've been very generous. I have one last question, which is we've seen a lot of states have their ballot initiatives die because of COVID, because you can't go and collect signatures. Are you worried about the election from a functional perspective in November? And what can you do? And then also what can we do to help, like Ann is in California, I'm in New Jersey, we're in blue states, but what can we do to help ensure there's election security in other states?
Well, in the very first bill that the House passed last year, dealing with the protection of the democracy, there were some provisions that I was able to get in that bill that dealt with vote by mail. Oregon has been conducting all its elections since 1996 by mail. There's never been a problem with hanging Chad. It's very high participation and voter security. And of course, there's a paper trail when you're done. We are fighting hard to give more resources to the states for vote by mail. It's something that voters want desperately. The Republicans are kind of incoherent. Donald Trump cast an absentee ballot in Florida, but he's against vote by mail. Absentee ballots are okay, not vote by mail.
Well, because it's the
He's
do
the
fraud
exception.
and you don't. Yeah.
He's the exception to everything, masks included.
But this is a concern. We have money that we will be proposing for election security at a time of coronavirus, when you have about half of the people who are poll workers are retirement age or beyond. It's not healthy for them. It's expensive and it's dangerous. So these are things that I am concerned about, but we're working to fight to encourage voting at home because it's safer, because it's cheaper, and because it's more secure.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for your time. The next time we get you on, I do want to ask you about psychedelics, but we want to be respectful of your time now.
Okay. Well, give us something to look forward to. Thanks for your attention to the nuts and bolts of this issue. I enjoy these conversations, and I think it's important for people to understand how the pieces fit together, and you do a great job of helping make that clear.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
sir.
so much. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Same to you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Take care. Our immense thanks to Congressman Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, a veteran of the Green Rush. For more on the Congressman, head over to earlblumenauer.com, or he can be found on Twitter at Rep Blumenauer, Blumenauer. If you want to chat with us, you can find us on Instagram at the Green Rush _podcast, or on Twitter at _Green Rush. God forbid we make it easy for you guys. Or drop us an email at greenrush@kcsa.com. Ask about our merch. And don't forget to subscribe. That's Take 40. Oh, and we have a YouTube channel, but we also can't figure out a good name for it. So just go to the bottom in the show notes and you'll find it there. Bye. That's 47 Take Shay. 47.
Cannabis.